The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Manjeet Singh is Director of Product Management at ServiceNow, ServiceNow's Future Products Group. He is responsible for incubating new products and services in the process of optimization and hyperautomation space. In this conversation, Manjeet will be giving us his view on the role of a product manager. It's more at its rawest term, launching new products and what's in store for ServiceNow, including innovation on the platform. And he's going to talk about a theme that we're hearing a lot about at the moment, which is the sort of intersection between AI, machine learning, as it can, the frame of digital transformation. So Manjeet, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, we gave a bit of an introduction there, but I'm sure I didn't do it justice. So let's give our listeners an overview of who they're speaking to, and maybe you can talk to us a bit about your career background as well.
So I was born and brought up in India, went to engineering school there, did my computer science degree. And then I was lucky enough to found my first job as a software engineer. And then a couple of years into working as a software engineer, I joined a US-based, very early stage startup. I was the sixth employee, and we were building a disaster recovery and high availability solution. So that was a fascinating experience. The team was growing, and that helped me move from US to our US office in 2006. And everything was going well. We grew up to 100 plus employee in the company. And then boom, we hit the 2008 market crash. We could not raise the funding, and the company decided to pretty much shrink down and shut down ultimately. And in that startup experience, I learned a lot, and I ended up joining HP, Hewlett-Packard. Again, a completely different environment, a very large organization with more than 300,000 people. And there, again, working in various engineering roles, I started to help as a Scrum Master or as a program manager. And as I was doing that dual role, I realized that I'm really enjoying this program management or product management as a function. So I decided to go for my MBA, as you mentioned in the intro, and that helped me transition from a technical role to the product role. And then I decided to move out of HP and got an offer from ServiceNow. So I've been with ServiceNow from last 6 years, worked in a few different product areas, and more recently, my focus is on creating net new product for ServiceNow so that we can increase our revenue, our total addressable market. And I have launched a bunch of product in the last few years. So I'm happy to dive in any of the area you would like.
Fantastic. So interestingly, we hear, actually you're the second person on the podcast I've spoken to that's navigated a technical to a product manager role. Talk to me about that transition and how did that, you spoke about how it came about, but what are some of the key learns that you've had and what advice would you give to others making that same move?
Yeah, a few things. So I would say my transition was organic and relatively easy because it was within the company, within the same business unit. So in my case, what worked in really was because I was already showing an interest that, hey, I want to be a PM. Was playing as a proxy PM whenever my main PM was on vacation, on PTO. And I was already building up that skill. The second important aspect I would say is showing the skill and having the interest is just one part, but you really should find a champion if you want to do a transition into a product role, because that person should be able to take a little bit of the risk on you because you are coming from technical. And as you know, the PM role is a diverse role. And compared to if I was like highly technical and now you're going into a more kind of broader set of skill set and expectation. So I would say that's one common path I see a lot of people take, and they should take. Look for opportunities within your organization, build up the skill by working on side projects, and then find a champion who can evangelize and maybe make intro into other teams. The two other approaches, because I coach and a lot of other people in my friend circles, and if anybody reaches out to me, and whenever they ask, what is my guidance on how they can make a switch? So two other ideas I'll throw out here is, if you're targeting a large company, Google's of the world or Facebook, I would say look for more of a junior PM role, because it will be very hard if you're like, hey, no, I already have 8 or 10 years of experience, and if you immediately or directly wants to go on a senior PM role, it will be a tough nut to crack. So, some success I've seen, the people go to a more of a PM role and then quickly grow because you already have a lot of experience. And the second one is startup, because many times a startup have to grow aggressively, and they are more willing to take risk on you in terms of, okay, that's fine if you don't have previous product manager experience, you come on board. As long as you're curious, you are a good culture fit, that should work out for you.
And as people make this transition, and it's really interesting that you take on board a lot of mentorship, and I know that's a key passion of yours. It's a bit of a simple question. What does it take to be an amazing product manager? What are some of the values you should hold dear to yourself and have as someone in looking to be their best in the product manager world?
So I would say a great PM, in most cases, in my experience, always have a very low ego, because I've seen some good PMs, but when the situation comes where you have to align the entire team, so that create that environment so that they can all become creative, bring up with new ideas, and solve some of those complex problems. I've seen some people, who are high on the ego, they struggle, and that's where great PMs really thrive, because they are very low ego and have a very high agency. And when I say high agency, means that taking the responsibility of the whatever problem you're solving, thinking it from the user point of view, and then define your product, and then coordinate all the action across these different cross functions team I mentioned, where you, as a PM, you have to work with, and I would say deliver a successful product. And there's so many areas. I think question can become itself a podcast episode, in some terms of the skills and the best practices. But let me give you one quick framework. So one way I look at it as for a great PM standpoint is that, hey, how is your product sense? Means, do you have a taste of building good product? And I call it a good product sense, because great PMs intuitively know what makes a product good, what makes a product bad. The second is, I would say, the execution sense, because even if you define a good product requirement, if you're not able to execute, if you are not able to rally around all the team members against the vision you have, then also it's the results will be poor. Third and most important is, because you talk a lot about AI and ML on this podcast. So I call that as a analytical sense, how you can use data and the insights to make much more informed decisions. And it means maybe looking at how the users are using your product, what sort of needs they have, looking at both qualitative and quantitative information, and make the right decisions. Because ultimately, as a PM, you have to do a lot of decision making. And the last, I would say, sense I have in my framework, this four-piece framework, is a strategic sense or a leadership sense, where how you can bring the alignment from the top down. What is as a company you want to do, and what is your business unit and your particular team. So able to bring clarity on why we are doing this, how it will impact our users, our customers, and then what it means for me as an individual to grow within the company.
You gave us a lot there. I'd be very interested. I see product managers in two different senses when we think about leadership, and that can be the leadership of a product. It can be an individual contributor leading the way and still a very senior person in an organization. And then it can also be a leader in leading other product managers. In your view as a product manager leader, what do you see as some of the best practices that you hold dear to yourself to keep yourself accountable to be the best leader you can be?
Yeah, good question. I think one way to think about this is as you grow in your PM ladder, PM, senior PM, group PM, director, VP, and let's eventually CPO. So one way to look at this ladder and the responsibility and the scope is that at what is your current level and where you are executing. Now, to answer your specific questions, as a director of product management, and I have progressed in my career within ServiceNow and before, and if I see what some of the different things that I focus more compared to, let's say, a couple of years ago, I would say once you are managing a team and specifically a product team, one key principle that I have is create an environment where everybody can thrive. And what it means is I think the PM role should have a lot of anonymity in terms of thinking creatively, able to go and talk to the users and don't have barriers. Hey, you cannot talk to the customers. So I would say as a team, you build an environment so that the entire team can start managing by themselves and start making decisions. And as a leader, you focus on at a higher level strategy, executing at your business unit level or at the company level, or I call it a kind of the meta focus rather than a one specific product focus. So I think what end of the day it comes down to is about people. How excited your team is to work on a given problem, on a given product, on a feature. Do they see themselves as creating impact? And I think once you have nailed down as a leader that, hey, everybody's involved, everybody is seeing how they are creating the impact on the company revenue, on the customer, I think that's, in my experience, create a lot of difference. And this ties back to the user empathy and building out the product that your customer or your users will love.
And it's very interesting that I think we interview a lot of leaders and some say their biggest challenge is letting go a little bit, letting things happen organically and focusing on that high level strategy and letting the team, run with those initiatives. So that's a really interesting point. You mentioned earlier on you launched 5 new products from ideation to release. I'd love for you to share with our listeners some of the specific products and that you've been involved with. And I think I'm really thinking about this from the value that you've seen them bring to customers. It would be amazing if you don't mind sharing a few.
Yeah. So let me throw in some color there. What I meant, this new product introduction. Our vision behind ServiceNow, we want to be a critical foundational platform for our customers, and that's I think a big goal because there's so many platforms out there, and if you want to become a platform, then it means you have to evolve in many different directions at the platform level and at the products and offering you're doing. So let me dive into the part that I'm focusing on in last, I would say, 2 years. So my current focus is we are a multi-product company, which means we run a lot of workflow on ServiceNow. We have ITSM solution, we have HR solution, customer service. Now we also launched many industry vertical specific solution. And what it means is all these workflows have a lot of processes that run on our platform. And when you run those processes, they get complex, they get very hard to understand and get visible into. And that's where we saw it as a growing pain for our customer. And we said, hey, how can we solve this problem? How can we start providing more understanding and visibility behind processes? Because if we can do that, then it will open up for a lot of new opportunities, and opportunities in terms of applying automation, which processes is right for automation, should we automate? And those are the areas, 2 products I built in the beginning. So one of them was continual service improvement, because I think that's at the core, in the sense when your team are identifying these opportunities to improve, whether it's the process level, people level, or at the tool level, where how you can bring all those ideas together and make sure you have strategic alignment and provide a very lightweight framework. Doesn't matter whether you follow a particular methodology like Six Sigma or DMAC, or there are so many of them. And that's applicable to no matter what you are running, a basic improvement project or an automation project. And then more recently, I'm focused on that the platform is evolving. We have a very strong AI and machine learning layer. We call it predictive intelligence. We have a very matured workflow engine. We have integration hub that can connect you with multiple platforms. So given all that the things, my focus is to think of these different digital toolbox that we have on the platform now, and then how we can build an end-to-end experience for people like the platform owner, process owners, because then you can start analyzing, hey, I want to see how is our change management process is working, and let me see what are the improvement opportunities and bottleneck or inefficiencies do we have there, and then show up the right insight so that as a process owner you can make the decision that should we automate, should we remove this unnecessary step. So what it's coming down to is I think the two key requirements that our customer wants to drive to. So number one is they want to transform their services in alignment with their digital transformation strategy. Number two is they want to automate as many manual processes as possible. So which means that these two KPIs, it's like, hey, simplified processes because it directly impact my user experience or customer experience. And then how can I continue to implement more intelligent automation so we free up people from this repetitive task and work on more product or project specific work as a team.
And looking at the products that you've released, any that stand out as your most notable achievement?
More recent one is, yes. So we launched our process optimization solution. And what we did there is we natively built process mining engine, because that is a great technique to auto discover your processes and save all those manual hours that you have to spend otherwise. And then overlay or integrate some AI techniques like identifying the root causes and identifying the automation candidate. So I would say that's the recent one that I'm really excited about, because I think the kind of impact it will have on our entire product line within ServiceNow, because it is a platform level capability and it can be used across ITSM, CSM, even our ITOM workflows. And I think keeping your workflow optimized is really I would say, one of the backbone when you start thinking about delivering a great employee experience or your customer experience.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Our next two questions are, I suppose, a bit about current day ServiceNow and then looking towards the future a bit. So as we look at innovation on the platform and specifically looking at how it's evolved and continuing to evolve, can you give us, our listeners, a bit of a high-level overview of how you've seen the platform evolve over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, when I joined ServiceNow almost 6 years ago, the company has evolved and the platform has evolved. And just to give some context, when I joined, we had 4,000 employees, and now we are almost touching 16,000. Wow. So which means that if we call ourselves a platform company, I would say let me step back a second. I think the one thing that is playing really in our favor from day one is a single data model, single architecture in one platform. And so far we have been able to stick to that strategy. Even if we, let's say, acquire another company, we do M&A, we always evaluate from the lens that we want to re-platform that solution and keep it to our core, which is single data model, single architecture, and all integrated experience. And that strategy is giving us a lot of leverage, and we will continue to do that. And I think even if whether we add that new scalability capability on the database side or on the execution side. And I think obviously my take is on where we really want to evolve and play a key important role. And of course, I'll say this is my personal opinion, and it does align with our strategy. So we want to be with this current strategy of a unified platform. We want to continue to improve our low code and no code capabilities, because that is the key. The way all the trends and all the market that it's existing is able to have a platform that is easy to use by lots of people, not just your pro developers, which means all your citizen developers, or I call them business users, and then able to seamlessly connect with other platforms. Because the truth is every customer is in this hybrid situation where they have public cloud, private cloud, the combination, some on-prem, and there is no other platform out there that is really thinking about being a critical platform in the middle. And I think we are uniquely positioned there because we start with the IT side of thing, and the IT team trusts us, and now we expanded into HR and other areas. So yeah, I think make platform easy to use, scalable, secure. That's the way I see it's evolving at a high level. And of course, the last point I'll mention is the AI first approach. So from the top down or bottom up, all our product teams are now aligned and in a way that, hey, we should be thinking about AI first mindset, which means any new features product we build, let's have a discussion and find out where are the opportunities to include more and more intelligence/automation.
You mentioned AI a couple of times throughout the conversation, and it's interesting. We've interviewed a lot of leaders and customers, people in high-level digital transformation roles, maybe not exclusively ServiceNow, and I think every organization we speak to has an AI/ML component, and there's definitely an intersection between AI/ML and digital transformation. A lot of the leaders we're speaking to are saying it's not a pixie dust that they can sprinkle across the business. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work and foundations that need to be in place to have that run correctly. But in your view, as leading from a product mindset, once that is in place, what do you really see as the kind of limitless value this could bring to organizations if you look to now into the future as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very important set of capabilities, AI, ML as a bucket. And the approach we are taking is a little bit unique in the sense that we want to solve for ServiceNow use cases first, which means we have access to the direct data, which is challenging for other players if they have to extract data out from other platform and do some intelligence on the top. And we are taking a more use case specific or a business problem specific approach. And so just to give you an example, my take here is there are a bunch of, when we think about automation, there are a bunch of ways to automate things, maybe an entire process or maybe subset of the process in the step. The automation can be done using scripting, using business rule, using, of course, the AI ML. And then the real question that I'm hearing very often from our customer is, hey, what tool we should use? Does it make sense? Or can you help in making that decision making? We know that this is a lot of manual activity, high volume, repetitive task happening. Should I use RPA here? Should I use an API based method? Or should I think about more kind of a machine learning model? And my take is, I think you should not be too much attached to quote unquote AI or ML. You should look at what is the best way to solve that problem by keeping the end user experience in mind. And the second follow-up question that you should ask is that is it sustainable? Will it continue to give the ROI? Because if I get excited just about an initial success of POC, and then later on struggle to scale from the initial one or two use cases, then I think that's not a good situation to be in. So yeah, I think that when I said we have this AI mindset, the way we look at it is, okay, this, let's say I'm working on this, we call it a hyperautomation. This is a Gartner term, where you are continuously discovering your processes, you're finding those opportunities where you can potentially automate. And then we are providing a more descriptive guidance or recommendation. Hey, this is a good candidate for where you should apply an RPA bot because there is a legacy platform involved. Or this one, no, RPA doesn't make sense because there is a direct API. Why don't you use Integration Hub? And here, if this is like some of the successful deployment we have for AI model is around auto triaging, classification, and clustering. So again, I think what it comes down to is take a use case based approach and see if applying AI ML makes sense or not.
Looking towards the future, because in your opinion, and obviously I appreciate you don't have a crystal ball, or maybe you do, but we've seen the platform grow exponentially, right? From ITSM, and we've now, as you mentioned before, we've seen HR, GRC, IT asset management. What does the longer term future hold for ServiceNow to be the platform of platforms? What's next on the horizon, just in your view?
So my view is we have a lot of capabilities on the platform, and we will continue to build a lot more in terms of individual capability. But what I think will differentiate us is how we can build it as a complete solution for all the customer needs around hyperautomation. And so the term hyperautomation is the reason I personally, this is because think of this as a kind of a framework. And if hyperautomation is your goal to continuously identify opportunities and continue to automate, today you have to use a combination of multiple tools and platform. And I think that this is one area I see where ServiceNow is going to play a key role to become a single integrated consolidated hyperautomation platform. And that it means AI ML capabilities, that means integration with other platform, and that means the more industry vertical solutions.
Fantastic. We've talked a lot about ServiceNow, as expected. I'd like to touch on your background again. Manjeet, if you were to go back 10 years and you had a chance to have a conversation with yourself and give yourself some advice, what advice would you give to a younger Manjeet?
And honestly, whenever I get this question, I always go back to pretty much the same answer. It hasn't changed from last 10 years. And the answer is along the line of that, hey, learn to take care of your mental health, physical health very early on. And I think I consider myself lucky enough to have that realization in my early, I would say, 30s. And then I took control of of course, the physical movement because see, quickly touching base on my, as a PM role, it's a very demanding job. You always have to be present and make sure your team is not blocked. And there's a lot of expectation. And then if you really want to be a well-rounded PM, happy PM, then I think you need to learn to take care of yourself. And what I mean by that is just whatever 5-10 minutes take out, whatever works for you. For any form of physical activity, you go to gym or do running or do yoga, but find whatever tool works for you. Because, hey, no matter how many successful product you build, if you're not happy and if your body starts to shut down, end of the day, it's not worth it. And with that, and I'll throw in a little bit of another passion that I have is, apart from my day job as a product manager, I'm also a fitness trainer and a nutrition coach. And I do this as purely out of, I would say, passion and labor of love from the last 10, 15 years. And the life I have transformed in terms of not as hey, I'll get you 6-pack, but just as that, hey, how you can be your best and do your best work no matter what your role is. And specifically in I think in the tech space, I see a lot of young people, we get so focused on just working, end up building these chronic pains like back pain and others. And you reach to a point where they're unreversible. And that's, I think, a bad mistake.
And I love that you framed that with that it's about long-term well-being as well. I absolutely love that. I think there's a lot of, and I myself have done that as well. There's a lot that you do the crash to get the Instagram picture, but it's not about that, right? That's not sustainable. It's about long-term health, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully you'll get a few messages about that topic as well after the podcast. I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a lovely place to leave it. This has been great, and I think you've given us so much to think about. I think this will be fantastic for aspiring product managers, people who are currently in a product manager or product leadership role. And also, you've given us a real in-depth view of your views on the landscape and future landscape of ServiceNow. This has been really comprehensive. Is there anything you'd like to say before we call it a day?
Yeah, if anybody wants to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn for anything related to ServiceNow you want to talk about. I'll be happy to chat. Or if you're looking for some inspiration on your fitness and wellness journey, you can search me on Instagram or just search for Coach Manjeet. And yeah, I hope you'll find it helpful.
Thank you very much, Manjeet. This has been great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.